Welcome to the 2024 Celebration of Preservation Awards presented by the Cleveland Restoration Society and the American Institute of Architects Cleveland chapter. We look forward to this joint program every year as we recognize the preservation projects that transform our communities. Tonight's program is made possible by the many fantastic companies that sponsor this event. A big thanks to our capital sponsors, Maroos Brothers Construction, Jameson Ricca Fenestration, and Miavana, an executive management company. To our pillar sponsors, a heartfelt thanks for your generous contributions. We are so grateful to our many cornice level sponsors who help make tonight's program possible. The old sentiment, "There's no place like home," truly captures this year's awards program ideal. The winners have poured loving care into homes from the mid-19th through the mid-20th centuries, or created new homes, whether residential units or homes for hard-working office teams, out of purpose-built historic buildings that have been creatively adapted. Everything from kitchens and living rooms in Cleveland neighborhoods to iconic structures like the West Side Market and Stan Hywet Hall and Gardens that welcome us home to Northeast Ohio will be celebrated tonight. The CRS-AIA jury reviewed many projects and selected those which are the most significant and representative of the value of historic preservation. The jury chose projects that embodied the criteria established by AIA Cleveland and the Cleveland Restoration Society. Criteria used included the quality of the work, adherence to recognized preservation standards, risk factors, strategic implications to promote preservation in the region, innovative preservation, financing, or partnering techniques, and the impact of the nominated property on the larger community. So please join us in recognizing and congratulating our winners. The honorable mention for Interior Residential Design Award goes to the Brown residence.
Jeremy Gatta with Danco Home Pro. Out of Shaker Heights, we are the general contractors for the project at the Barker Brown residence.
My name is Erin Barker Brown, and along with my husband, Jeff Brown, I am the homeowner. Our home is located in the Sussex area of Shaker Heights. It was built in 1928, and the architect was Fox, Duthie, and Foose. The original owner did live in the home from the late 1920s until the early 1990s. We've been in our house approaching 18 years now. We walked in and initially had just a feeling about the house, some comfort. Some of the main things that drew us to the house are pieces that we incorporated into this last project. As far as changes that have happened over time, the kitchen was remodeled multiple times previously, but we have now renovated just about every space in the house, some with only paint and a little bit of love. But this last kitchen, bathroom, etc. project was sort of our last large renovation to the house that we had planned.
We became engaged very early on in the process with the homeowners, who, along with a keen eye for design, kind of already had the initial vision. We used several techniques on this project, starting with structural upgrades and leveling of the entire kitchen floor to ensure that the new flooring met seamlessly with the existing hardwood floors in the original entrance to the kitchen from the dining room and from the front hall. A handmade ceramic tile entryway and kitchen floor tile complements the brick exterior look and the kind of natural surroundings of the house. Distinctive arched doorways, as Erin mentioned, were replicated between the new kitchen and the dining room to interact well with the rest of the home. The original hardwood floors and doors were preserved and remain in the powder room and dining room. We removed soffits that were put in for an air conditioning retrofit to restore the kitchen ceilings to the original height, and milled trim to match existing trim to install throughout the project. Careful selection of building products were used to make sure that we met modern building code, achieved the functionality that Aaron talked about, but also retained the original character of the home.
With minimal changes to the original floor plan, we created these interesting and quite lovely new sight lines throughout the project, and we increased the functionality of it. My favorite part of the project, I asked my son this question, and I feel like I should answer for him. He says his favorite part is the coffee bar, although he doesn't drink coffee, but it does also house our snacks. So that's probably where that comes from. Our dog would say her favorite part is the dog station that we were able to incorporate into the dining room. We were actually able to use the kind of the dead space in the corner kitchen cabinet. So she's got her own little space now. Nobody steps in her water dish, which is great. With regard to financing for this project, everything pointed to the Heritage Home Loan program as being the best way for us to be able to do what we really wanted to do for this project. And this is actually our second Heritage project. It was a great experience for us again. Overall, we would all say that we loved collaborating and problem solving with Danco on this project. It was just, we could not have asked for a better contractor for us. We love this home. We always say if we ever had to leave, my husband would have to take me out with my hands on the door frames. So it was just so exciting that this could happen for us and everyone involved, and for our home that we love so much. Thank you to Cleveland Restoration Society and AIA Cleveland for the honorable mention in Interior Residential Design Award.
The Award of Merit for Streetscape Impact in a Historic District goes to the Thomas Oliver residence.
My name is Kathleen Thomas. I am the neighbor who purchased the home that was awarded for its improvement of our street.
My name is David Ellison, and I'm the next door neighbor and the architect of the project. So this house is located on Carroll Avenue. The houses, including Kathy's house, were built mostly after the Civil War, what you see there now. Our first record of this property being listed in a city directory is in 1864. Like a lot of the houses that were built right after the Civil War in Cleveland, this house is a wooden house. It's fairly representative of a typical type, where there's 3 windows across the front facade, the gable faces the street, and the entry door and the staircase to the second floor is located to one side. This house, we're not quite sure what it may have looked like originally, but it wouldn't have been a grand Italianate house like you might find on Franklin or on Fulton. Carroll Avenue was always a little bit more modest in the architecture that was built there.
My first experience with Ohio City was back in the mid-1970s, when there was a movement to restore Ohio City. And I met just such a variation of personalities. It included artists, it included intellectuals, it included business people. And together, they were determined to bring Ohio City back to life. This left a very deep impression on me. My partner and I, Mary Oliver Lidgy, began looking in 2008. We found this home on Carroll Avenue, which was a street that we always admired. It just has a certain coziness to it.
When she showed up and bought the house, we made friends immediately and saw, a common vision for making that little corner of Carroll Avenue our home. Both of us like historic homes. From the very beginning, Kathy was very ambitious about remodeling and making her home better. And so it's been a long process of one project after another that culminated in this most recent addition into that side yard.
When I purchased the home, it was a legal 2-family, and the exterior was clad in old vinyl siding, a cheap entry design that really belonged back in the 70s. David and I got together. I told him what it was that we desired the most. David drew up the initial interior design. Originally, we moved walls so that we could create a front area living space.
It was amazing the house was even standing up.
Well, nothing was glued together as it should have been. Everything was in very, very poor condition. I wanted to start from scratch. I wanted to go through the entire process.
The really great thing about what Kathy and Mary wanted was they wanted to put it right. My approach to design, especially when it involves an addition to an historic house, is to be as compatible and complementary as I can. My interest isn't in faking the historical architecture, but in adding to it using the language of the original architecture in a way that is complementary or compatible. Ultimately, having that lot filled in by a building and occupied by the addition improves the continuity of the architecture and the fabric of the neighborhood so that there's not this missing gap in the spacing of the buildings.
What has been especially wonderful has been neighbors who have come by more than once and have said, "Thank you so much. This fits into the neighborhood beautifully."
I think one of the things that made the project challenging was living right next door and being such good friends with the owners. And we've talked about this addition for years.
It was definitely a work in progress over the years. David, though, was very patient, and I can't say enough about that. And taking what we needed and wanted, he always made the right decision. Thank you to Cleveland Restoration Society and AIA Cleveland for the Award of Merit for Streetscape Impact in a Historic District.
The Heritage Home Program Award goes to 7216 West Clinton Avenue.
I'm Lee Chilcote, and I'm the homeowner of 7216 West Clinton Avenue in Cleveland. My wife and I have lived here with our family since 2010, and we've lived in the neighborhood since 2006. My knowledge of the area is that it was settled in the late 19th century, early 20th century, basically by kind of a merchant class of folks, people who were not wealthy, but more middle class. There were people who worked in trades and industries. The owner of my house was R.J. Fetterman, and he was a tinner. We don't know who the architect was. So we lived next door to this house for 12 years before we bought it. And the owner was older and decided to move to a different location, and she sold it to an investor. We found out that the investor was planning to put vinyl siding up on the house, possibly kind of skirt some rules as far as being an historic district. And we didn't want to see that happen. We lived next door and we saw an opportunity to preserve a house and create an asset for our family. And that's what we did. As soon as I walked in the door of that house, boom, I was like, we have to buy this house because it's so beautiful. It just is a very cool historic home, and we just saw an opportunity to bring it back to life. So I would describe this building as a well-loved family home. It was mostly left intact. The siding, the original lapwood siding, was covered up by concrete siding, but underneath that concrete siding, the wood was remarkably well preserved. The wood floors on the second floor were in excellent shape and could be refinished. It had all of the original molding except for maybe one corner of one room. A picture rail, a bench seat. It has the original front door, bay window, high ceilings, crown molding, large windows. One of our ambitions with this house was to do the opposite of gut and gray. It happens a lot on our street because our street has become valuable, so it's become a target for investors. And so this project was partially a response to that. It's a response to what's happening in the housing market. And so we tried to do, basically a historic rehab on a budget. And it's very green because it means keeping everything that you can in that house. When they're doing the drywall, they took off so many pieces of wood, baseboard molding, trim, crown molding, etc. They also saved a lot of the plaster. So we totally upgraded the plumbing and electrical and replaced plaster where it was damaged, but we didn't replace all the plaster in the house. And I worked with some fabulous contractors, just amazingly talented. I mean, I think it's preserving a house in the neighborhood for future generations. It's a historic rehab, so it's bringing a house back to life in a way that preserves that history and celebrates that history. It's adding value to the neighborhood. After a lot of thought, we decided to turn the house into an Airbnb, and that has been a great decision because what it allows us to do is to host individuals and families from all over the world and show them the Gordon Square Arts District. I would just stress that it would not have been possible for us to do this project without the Heritage Home Loan Program. Right before the pandemic, we built an addition on our house, and we used the Heritage Home Program to do that. And it was a fantastic experience. And then, of course, when we decided to buy the house next door, that was like my second call was to CRS. The thing I think that made it work was the fact that I was able to oversee it without hiring a general contractor, and CRS and the Heritage Home Loan Program was able to work with me on that. The program is so wonderful because it's very, very affordable. And the fact that it's at a reduced interest rate for folks who are specifically interested in historic preservation, that's amazing. It made the project possible. We were just really touched and honored. I mean, we didn't do the project expecting that anything like this would happen. It was unexpected, and we felt very honored. Thank you so much to Cleveland Restoration Society and AIA Cleveland for the Heritage Home Program Award.
The Outstanding Restoration of a Historic Feature Award goes to Stan Hywet Hall and Gardens Great Hall Chandelier Restoration.
Well, my name is Bob Halper. I'm with Holos Lighting, previously of Halper Lighting Solutions. And we were asked to come in to Stan Hywet to review their Great Hall Chandelier.
I am the collections manager here at Stan Hywet. And as part of my responsibilities, I take care of all of the collection. Stan Hywet Hall and Gardens was the home of F.A. Seiberling, who was a co-founder of Goodyear Tire and Rubber. And the home was built between 1912 and 1915 by architect Charles S. Schneider. And it is a Tudor Revival mansion with 5 historic service buildings. The chandelier that was involved in this project is a major component of our Great Hall, which is one of the largest rooms in the manor house. And it is a huge light fixture that is such a large feature in the room. And when you walk up the tower stairs to our minstrel's balcony, you are at eye level with this beautiful fixture. In the course of changing a light bulb, we had an electrical short that caused half of the fixture to go out. And when I had our facilities director take a look at it and try and fix it, he realized that it still had its original cloth tube wiring. And he recommended that we rewire this fixture so we would avoid future problems and potential fire. It hadn't really been touched in over 100 years. Well, one of the key things was that the chandelier is mounted permanently with a chain around a steel beam. And we had been told for decades that this chandelier weighed about 1,000 pounds. So we weren't sure how we were going to get it down. And it's also wider than any door in the manor house. So we weren't sure how we were going to get it out. We knew we had to take it apart and we had to figure out how to get it down.
And our largest, most immediate problem was lowering it safely and in such a way that we'd be able to put it back up. After much discussion, agreed that it was the best idea to provide a permanent winch in their attic. And in doing so, we did accommodate for way more weight than it actually had, just to play it safe. You always should go over twice anyway, just to play it safe with immediate impulses of when something goes and jerks down. So once that was done, we We did accommodate it for well over 1,000 pounds. It came in at 475 pounds. It took a while for them to get the proper winch in there, but once they did, we were able to bring it down and disassemble it, find out what was on the inside.
As part of the restoration process, I know that there is a historical artist who worked on the project using preservationist techniques and using historically accurate materials and methods of application.
Our artist, Laurel Herbold, is a real whiz when it comes to understanding not only colors and textures of paints, but historically appropriate uses. How would they have been applied at the time? There were, I believe, as many as 4 different golds in the gold that you see in that.
When the chandelier was taken out for this project, it was during our close season. We're closed from January through March. And so during that time, it's a dark time of year. And there are 28 lights in this chandelier. So it casts a pretty good light. And it was a big difference not having it. And when it was installed, the guests and our volunteers, everyone is just amazed at the difference in how it looks. It is so much brighter. The colors are so much more vibrant. And as I said before, the minstrel's balcony vantage point of looking at this light, you are only about 5 feet from the light and eye level.
The proximity of something normally would not be, that close to people's eyes, but the 2nd-story balcony puts you right there, right on top of it. So I think the best part of it is that now when people see it, they didn't even know the detail that they were missing before. And now they're able to see every little detail because they're so close. And so we're really proud to have been able to be a part of that.
Just seeing everyone's reaction to the finished product and just seeing how beautiful it is now and imagining that that is how it looked when it was originally placed in the Manor House. Thank you to Cleveland Restoration and AIA Cleveland for the Outstanding Restoration of a Historic Feature Award.
The Outstanding Restoration of a Historic Structure Award goes to Miavana, Inc.
My name is Joseph Park, part owner of Compass Studio. I was the lead architect and design team, and then also the builder. The project's located in downtown Hudson, Ohio. It was built in 1839, the original structure, by the builder lender Starr, and managed by Anson Brewster. It's been known as the Brewster Building because he became the sole owner. So it was a store for a long time, kind of fell into disrepair. And then in, I believe, 1908, it was purchased by a wealthy industrialist who came back to Hudson and started preserving structures throughout the area. And it became the first national bank of Hudson. It stayed a bank for a long time. There have been additions. There was a larger addition in the 1950s. At one point, it was considered to be torn down. There was outrage. It was actually preserved and has changed hands. And then my client purchased the structure, and his vision was to restore it, at least on the exterior, its original state. And then it's a place for his business on the inside. So it's, brick walls, timber framed structure. The timber frame was actually failing. So, which was, an interesting thing as an architect to take on, because we also wanted to preserve all the timber beams, not just rip them all out and put steel in, but we actually held the original structure up with steel, and we tried to do that as seamlessly as we could with the design. We were hiding beams in coffers and millwork. The trusses on the 3rd floor, we uncovered them in demo. We wanted to cathedral the ceiling to get to the roof, but it was really important for us to keep them. And so we ended up figuring out how to put a tension cable on the underside of it and then add some lateral bracing that then made it viable for us to maintain them and keep them exposed, but also to reinforce them. After being renovated and used different ways over a long time, it did start to impact in construction. I think just being sensitive to the existing structure, which was very important to the client, it takes a little more care. And really, we were preserving the original 1839 piece of the structure as closely as possible. And we had some old images that we could look at. Some of the things like the balustrade at the top, how many were there? How many lights were there in the windows? Were there shutters? What did they look like? A lot of it was removing what was there, which was kind of in disrepair a little bit, and restoring it and putting back new, but they're all wood windows, they're all wood shutters, all wood millwork on the entire thing. And then on the 1950s edition, it was actually pretty terrible back of house parking area. So we tried again to be sensitive to the architecture, creating a more symmetrical vestibule that you enter into, really just restoring it back to what it was, which was already beautiful. So in a lot of ways, you look at a picture of when it was older, you look at a picture of it now and you go like, they're the same. And that's kind of the goal. Anytime I think someone invests in an old structure to bring it back to, I guess, its original glory, we'll say, or just restore it so it doesn't look like it's falling apart. I think it encourages, one, the neighborhood, that people care about what the existing fabric is of a downtown, which is actually very important. You don't want to just remove history and then replace it with something brand new. I think individuals like to see their memories kind of restored in some ways. And I think it encourages others to say, this person invested, why shouldn't we invest in this other property to bring it back to life? I think it encourages people that it's okay to want to do that and to spend real money to do that. A lot of blood, sweat, and tears goes into these projects. So when your peers recognize that, you're proud of your team, pretty exciting. Just want to say thank you to the Cleveland Restoration Society and AIA Cleveland for the Outstanding Restoration of a Historic Structure Award.
The AIA Cleveland Compatible New Building in a Historic District Award goes to Dexter Apartments.
Gary Ograki with Dimmitt Architects, and I was a principal here, and I was helping coordinate the project.
Colby Turnock with Casto, the developer of the project.
I am Analia Dimmitt at Dimmitt Architects, and I work with the team on the interiors on the project.
Ted Singer was the project manager for Dimmitt Architects.
The Dexter is on the restored Franklin Circle in the Ohio City Preservation District, which per National Park Service represents a complete community from the second half of the 19th century on the near west side of Cleveland, an area which was once the independent municipality of Ohio City. On the north side of the district is Franklin Circle, a traffic circle with 6 radiating streets. 3 corners contain visually significant structures, a high Victorian Gothic church of dark red brick, an apartment house with Flemish steeped gables, and an apartment with cylindrical turreted towers. When this project was started, the circle was gone. When the city of Cleveland decided to recreate the circle, which was once there, the Dexter was kind of a new structure to help kind of reinforce the original presence of the circle.
The site was appealing, and the reason why we were excited about the project was because of the infill nature of the site, and it's a really unique opportunity to integrate a new building into the existing fabric of a community.
There was a very extensive neighborhood design process where we had many block club meetings, and I would say that the residents' input, was taken into account when we did this.
Some of the design considerations that we focused on in this project was trying to integrate the building with the surrounding context and at a variety of scales, as well as trying to understand how the reconfigured or reconstructed circle would interface with the new structure. At the beginning of the job, the intersection was just a simple cross intersection, and as the project was being built, the intersection was being reconfigured and restored to the circle that had once been there. So it was an interesting challenge to mitigate. The material choices were based on utilizing similar masonry pallets from adjacent buildings on the circle so that there would be a dialogue.
Another unique design element that we worked through with the neighborhood and Ohio City Inc. was having a pedestrian connection through the middle of our building, so that when the circle was reinstated, there was a pedestrian pathway for people to walk through the circle, through our building, and then to the Hinchtown area.
We wanted to bring to the inside a little of nostalgia that happened on the neighborhood, and the way we brought it was through different materialities and also the artwork. The team in charge of providing artwork actually walked the neighborhood, took photos, and then we hung them on the wall. So we tried to bring the old Cleveland into the interiors.
The common area spaces, the contributing artwork and the design, the furniture, all really provides for kind of this elevated living experience that's still true to the local community. And you know, we quote unquote sacrificing a premium corner on the top floor for a community space that all the residents can enjoy, indoor outdoor space with wonderful views of the lake and downtown. Overlooking the neighborhood. I think those common elements really are special in this project. I think the project improves the neighborhood by creating a stronger sense of place on the reinstated circle.
I think our hope that it would be a contextual, very, sort of sympathetic to the neighborhood kind of building. I hope we achieved it, and it's always nice to work with a great team, and at the end, I hope we're able to kind of pull people together.
On behalf of the entire team, the Meet Architects, the contractors, the client, everybody, we want to thank you, Cleveland Restoration Society and the AIA Cleveland for the Compatible New Building in a Historic District Award.
The AIA Cleveland Compatible New Building in a Historic District Award goes to Ford Hessler Apartments.
I'm Russell Baruch. I'm the developer in the form of a managing member of a partnership that developed and owns the building.
Kevin Dreyfus-Wells with RDL Architects. I'm the Vice President of Architecture, and my role in the project was the lead designer.
I'm Chad Boston with RDL Architects. I'm a project designer too, and I worked with drafting the project and coordinating with the engineers under the direction of Kevin here.
This project is located in the Hessler Road Historic District, and Hessler is in the heart of University Circle. It's on a small side street that's tucked between Euclid Avenue and the Case Western University campus. And what makes it special is just its rich variety of architecture and the way that buildings really hug the road and at an intimate scale. This was Cleveland's first historic district, designated in 1975. A lot of people know it from its counterculture era, starting in the 60s and 1970s, and especially this Hessler Street Fair with its arts and its music. That fair went on hiatus in its 50th anniversary in 2019, but we're really hoping that that comes back and that this building can be a part of that again. We were brought in to really take a second look at this site after some previous study.
In essence, the area nonprofit is called University Circle Incorporated. They had owned this site for quite a long time, and it had a small vacant parcel as part of the 3-parcel complex, and they wanted it to be developed. They wanted the 2 existing buildings at Front Ford Road to be preserved and stabilized. I submitted a proposal, and we won. And then through a circuitous process, we modified significantly the original building design to both attach to the 1975 building. And the second major modification was to downsize it significantly to fit the scale and context of the street in a better and more modest way. This was contentious in the eyes of some of the neighborhood residents who opposed any development whatsoever. And we had to work through the reality that some of those neighbors filed a lawsuit on the city of Cleveland and named us with respect to zoning and appropriateness and other objectionable to them aspects of this project.
This site had been a gravel parking lot for over 70 years. We felt it was really important to fill in that gap and create a more holistic and integrated project.
We iterated through multiple approaches for the design. Our original approach looked at studying in depth the character of the duplexes down the street. Since it's at the front of the neighborhood, it really acts as a gateway, and we wanted to pull from the large sandstone elements and the masonry detailing and be cognizant of the rafter tails to help add to the character and then connect to the masonry buildings at the front, and then transition into talking and connecting with the duplexes at their smaller size and their smaller scale on the character down the street.
What's wonderful about Hessler Road is it's a historic resource that anyone can enjoy. But what hasn't been the case in the past is that if you're a person who might have mobility challenges, you can't actually participate before this building in being a part of the life of the street. The nature of the buildings is they've got steps and porches and are difficult to adapt.
And we didn't want to just add a ramp to the building. We wanted that to be integrated into the architecture itself.
One thing we're very, very proud of is that now someone who might be using a wheelchair can be a resident in the first floor unit, live independently with dignity, and really enjoy this historic resource in the same way as any other resident.
To my mind, the completed project succeeds very well in pulling together the grouping of buildings that adjoin them, and also the townhomes down the street, as well as other structures on Hessler. I think it feels like it completes the district in a material way.
We're just so honored that CRS and AIA would choose to recognize our contribution to this street, and so grateful to Baruch Development Partners for the opportunity to be a part of the project. And thank you to the Cleveland Restoration Society and AIA Cleveland for this award for compatible new building in the historic district.
The Award of Excellence for Residential Restoration with Architecturally Appropriate Addition goes to the Whedon-Farwell House.
I'm Joseph Matava from Peninsula Architects. I'm the project architect.
I'm Mary Lohman, and I'm the homeowner of this project. The Whedon-Farwell House was built in 1826 and designed by Lemuel Porter. The house was unique to this area in terms of the way that he placed the house or positioned the house on the property. He positioned it at an angle so that it would receive sunlight throughout the day. Instead of a center staircase, he had a very modest staircase here, and instead put in a beautiful barrel vaulted ceiling, which is really unique. This house has been many things over the years. It was a residence, it was a boarding house, it was a library, it was an inn. The house became fairly chopped up. Bedrooms were converted into bathrooms. Kitchens were installed in the upstairs bedrooms. We sort of felt when we were working on this place, like it was like an archaeological dig.
You know, we found a lot of the house in disarray, bad additions, poor alterations to the existing historic fabric. The whole thing was really this process of trying to understand what was originally there and honoring that, and then adding to that in a way that was resonant with the original structure. But then we brought in John Milner Architects as a historic preservation consultant, and they helped us through a lot of the key details, a lot of things that we don't see every day at Peninsula Architects, but they see every day.
There was this enormous responsibility my husband and I felt not to make any mistakes with this, not to do anything that would detract from the beauty and the iconic nature of this house. We knew what a rare jewel we had been fortunate enough to have fall into our laps, and we did not want to be the ones to screw it up.
I really am thankful that this project is getting this award because I think it really validates our approach and what we did. You know, it was very difficult.
We've had nothing but positive feedback since the project was completed. People stopping by here, people stopping us in the street, people taking pictures of the house, people shouting from their cars. So that's been incredibly validating.
I think what you did here, Mary, was you took a structure and you reinforced the foundation. We repaired the walls. We did so many things that's going to make this thing last for another 200 years easily. We're not going to do it the cheapest way or the easiest way. We're going to do it the best way. And I think that's probably the most lasting impact that something like this has on the community, is that it has a resilience and a long lastingness to it.
It's watching this beautiful jewel box of a house become restored, reborn, refreshed, and brought into the 21st century. I think that's my favorite part of it. I think we've taken this house that's been in existence for almost 200 years, and we've potentially ensured its longevity for another 200 years.
This team is just awesome, and I'm thrilled to be part of it. I feel like everybody did an awesome job on their part, and they were all dovetailed together in a way that you just don't see a lot.
To have this amazing team that worked on this house be part of these accolades too means everything to Larry and me as well, because this couldn't have happened without them. Thank you to the Cleveland Restoration Society and AIA Cleveland for the Award of Excellence for Residential Restoration with Architecturally Appropriate Addition.
The Excellence in Creative Adaptive Reuse Award goes to LDA offices at the historic WHK Studio One.
My name is Sean Neese. I am with Renew Partners, and we are the co-developers on this project with Sabre Group.
Jesse Swigert. I am the project manager on the project with LDA Architects.
I'm Michael Sandberry at LDA Architects. I acted as the historic preservation specialist and tax credit specialist.
I'm Cordray Sundstrom. I'm also with LDA, and I was one of the interior designers on this project.
The building is a contributing building to the WHK Studio One National Register. It is one of 5 structures that comprise the complex that WHK took over in 1950. This particular building was constructed sometime between 1920 and 1932. So this was just a warehouse type space. Originally, it was converted into recording studios for WHK in 1949. And they used this building as their main recording studios until 1977. WHK is a radio station that started in Cleveland. It was one of the very first radio stations in the nation. And over time, it became one of the radio stations that promoted rock and roll in the 1950s. When FM came about, they had a sister station, which became WMMS and promoted rock and roll in the 70s.
So we've been here since 2013 as part of the Agora complex. We really love the neighborhood. We love the building and the area that we're in, and we wanted to stay a part of that. We started designing this office space as kind of a generic office space. We really began to see the potential that this office could be for our home.
One of the most challenging parts of this space is when we discussed the project with the State Historic Preservation Office, they required us to maintain most of the solid walls around the building. Being a recording studio, it did not have many windows because glass doesn't have the same sound attenuation as a solid brick masonry building. So getting this space to be a usable space was very difficult with natural lighting and exterior views. We solved that with significant amounts of skylighting and window openings where we were allowed to do that. SHPO required us to keep the historically significant recording studios as well as the circulation space.
One of the big interior features we have are acoustical panels and acoustical custom treatments within specifically the main studio space that we retained and rehabbed some of the missing pieces to that. I think one of the other big features on the interior is all the windows that would look from the recording areas into the studios with special glass that is insulated and angled to reduce sound frequencies to help with the recording. I think all those are retained that were historical and existing. And we actually use that as a means to help get natural light throughout the space as well.
The acoustics in this office, because it was a studio, are awesome. It's really kind of a nice feature that I didn't really think about until LDA moved in. And I was like, man, this is This is really nice.
Where the original wood ceiling was charred and burned from a fire at some point, decades ago, it was painted, so we kept it painted, kept it the charred look. So the combination of where we have the brick, the charred beams, and the new wall construction around the skylight, I think is one of my favorite features.
You'll see a lot of arched features in our new office. There's a pretty large one that we installed in the lobby, and I think that's really a showpiece when you walk in. The inspiration behind all of these features was from a old recording studio microphone. So it has the rounded corners, and you'll see that through our lighting, through our signage, and a few wall features.
With any adaptive reuse project, you're always trying to balance the usability for the new purpose while still honoring the history of the building. And I think that's what we try to do in these WHK studios. This project did receive a Cirrus low carbon certification. So we did go above and beyond in a few areas. So this is a relatively new certification, and it's the first project in the United States that got it. We're big believers in Midtown, and we think that for Midtown to continue being successful, it needs to have all kinds of different users. So this complex as a whole will have multifamily as a restaurant space and has office. And, it creates sort of a vibrant 24/7 complex where people are working there, they're living there, dining there. And so we really think it's great for the community.
I think as a designer or working on projects, architectural projects, you know who the end tenant or user is going to be, but it's almost never you. I think it was really interesting to work on a project that we knew was going to be our own. I think it made for a better design.
People that are in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame right now that got their start from WMMS recorded in the WMMS studios. So it's a really important part of Cleveland history. I mean, we're the city of rock and roll, and LDA is in the offices of rock and roll. Thank you to the Cleveland Restoration Society and AIA Cleveland for the Excellence in Creative Adaptive Reuse Award.
The Award of Excellence for Restoration of a Cleveland Landmark goes to Majestic Hall.
My name's Gary Fisher. I was the architect of record for the project. My company is Fisher & Associates Architects, so we had the honor of helping to restore this great building. So the building sits on the corner of 30th and Euclid on the southeast corner. It's 3000 Euclid Avenue. It was designed originally by Milton Dyer in 1903 to 1904. It was the first Methodist church and was in what was considered the central neighborhood for most of its life. In 2010, the congregation left the Euclid Avenue building because they merged with another church. It then went vacant after that and sat vacant for a number of years and then went up for sale. The developer bought the building, looked at what the opportunities were for it. Obviously, there's the school building at the rear that was a much later addition, and absolutely a gorgeous white elephant in the front and sort of the plain Jane at the back. What do you do with such a dramatic space? Well, initially you hear people go like, well, we'll just go in and we'll part it out and we'll take all the lamps and we'll sell those off and we'll strip all the stained glass and take everything that's of any value out of the building. And then it just becomes a shell. Unfortunately, the developer looked at this one and said he agreed with everyone's vision and had that same vision to say, this is going to be really dramatic. When we finish, it'll be a wonderful place to come and hold an event. As you look around the building, there is just a massive amount of tracery painted on everything. The original light fixtures were intact, and we were able to restore all of those. The plaster work was showing damage. It's about 95 feet to the top of the tower. So in order to start to restore the plaster, we had to build scaffolding up to this point. Plaster was able to work there to remake molds. And not only is he an amazing plasterer, he is also an amazing painter because he was able to restore all of the paint. And there are areas in that building that I know where the damage was. And I would defy anyone else to walk in the building and find the spots that he patched because it's very hard for me to look at it and find where his work leaves off and the original work starts. Single-handedly, he restored all the plaster work in this building. The front doors had been boarded up and sealed off. We were able to take those down, and actually each door was removed individually. They're incredibly tall doors. They're about 9 feet tall. They're about 3.5 inches thick. Finding, again, hinges that would fit and be of that era, we were able to track those down. So all the doors were repaired, refinished, and put back in place. The handrails that are out on Euclid Avenue that go up the stairs were in poor condition. Those have all been completely rehabbed and powder coated. All the floors were refinished in there. There were holes that were cut in the floors over the years. Those have all been patched in the main sanctuary area. The raked floor, the sloped floor in there, is very shallow. And there was some concern initially about the actual slope of that floor and how do you put dining tables and things in there. After looking to say that slope is not enough, that we need to level that floor out. So we were able to maintain all of the original floors. So when you walk into this building, everything that you see around you is the same way that it looked when it was originally constructed. When I walk inside, you can't help but look up and think about the people who sat in that sanctuary space, because the tower covers almost the entire sanctuary. And there's this just amazing paintwork and plaster work all the way up. But then I also look at the light fixtures, which are truly one of a kind. And they're these little kind of unique sconce lights. I'm enamored with those as well. Your eye gets drawn to these little details, and there's visual interest everywhere in here. And then again, the organ ranks that are up in the front of the building are just fantastic. And then the back building, they were able to find a tenant for that as well that will maintain that building, and that'll be a daily use there. And then the front of the building obviously is for events and parties. So taking an empty building now brings, new life to that neighborhood and offers the opportunity, instead of another vacant lot, if a building were lost, to provide something productive for the whole neighborhood. The time that was spent and the care that was spent, restoring not only the plaster, but the doors and the floors and woodwork, and every aspect, involved all of us kind of interacting together and working together to make it work. And I think it became a fun project for everyone because we knew we were doing something really good. To have the recognition for that, and to have other people then call up other colleagues and friends, and even my wife, she goes, "I'm just so proud of you for that work on that building." So, and I guess that's probably the best one. But to be able to save something of a building of this size and the architecture that we see there is truly an honor and a privilege. So, and then to be recognized for it by CRS is even better. It's the icing on the cake, and that's a pretty amazing wedding cake behind us. Thank you, Cleveland Restoration Society and the AIA Cleveland, for the Award of Excellence for the restoration of a true Cleveland landmark.
The Award of Excellence for Stewardship and Preservation goes to the 345 Glass House.
Hi, I'm Susan Sequoy Jensen. I am one of the property owners with my husband, Dan Jensen, and I am the architect. The building is located at 345 Prospect Road in Berea, and it was built in 1965. The original architect is Carl Droppers. I grew up in Strongsville, and as a child, my mother ran errands in Berea, and we passed by the house on a regular basis. I was always curious about it since its design was so unique. So fast forward over 4 decades later, my husband and I were visiting from Southern California in 2017, and I wanted to see if the house was still there. So we parked and recognized it immediately. And he stated, "Well, this doesn't look like something you'd see in Northeastern Ohio." I wrote a letter to the owners explaining my history and interest in seeing the house during a future visit. They generously offered a tour when we were back in town, which was in 2019. We kept in touch with them, and when it was time for them to sell it, we met, determined a price, and began the process of purchasing the house. I'm a modernist and was drawn to this extraordinary example of the international style of modern design. It also reminded me of other projects that I've studied, such as Philip Johnson's glass house, as well as the Farnsworth house. Deferred maintenance had occurred throughout time, but the beautiful thing is the character-defining features were intact. The original materials were there. It was really undisturbed. Part of the process involved interviewing the children of Carl Droppers who grew up at this property. They and their children visited the house and shared many memories about life. at the 345 Glass House. And preservation efforts have been guided by drawings created by the original architect and structural engineer. Replacing over 50% of the glass with like-for-like materials required rebuilding the wood molding surrounding each piece of glass. Linseed oil was used to restore the Philippine mahogany wood panels throughout the house. Original photos and my childhood memories recalled the exterior wood siding was originally stained and natural. It had been painted over. We removed each panel and replaced it with natural mahogany panels as were originally specified. Again, we were guided by the architect's original drawings and specifications. We installed drapes for the original design, which utilized the integral track within the ceiling. They are easily adjusted as the sun moves throughout each day. The kitchen cabinets were removed and either repaired or, if beyond repair, replaced with like-for-like materials and design. And Carl Droppers had integrated beautifully the cabinets of the Philippine mahogany, then a white appliance, then the cabinets, then another white appliance, then the cabinets. So there's this gorgeous rhythm. However, the dishwasher was directly below the sink. It's designed to be that way. I never knew they even made such an animal, but they do. And we listened to the kids that grew up there explain how they hated doing dishes because it just didn't function. And so I did design a new kitchen island that responds to the cabinets, and we integrated a dishwasher into that. And we kept the original dishwasher and turned it into our trash. That's a little whimsical. It's fun and it functions well. The electrical system is still a challenge. We're still working on some of the amazing components that he had integrated into the home, such as the touch plate system. And we're finding consultants now that are familiar with the touch plate system, trying to revisit the best way to get everything up and running again as it was originally designed. There's an original intercom system in this house that we're determined to see come to life. By integrating a new panel and circuits and so forth, we know it can be done. It's just a challenge. Wallace Lake, which is adjacent to the east edge of the property, was originally a sandstone quarry. When the sandstone quarry was abandoned in the 1930s, it was then filled with water and became the lake we know today. We pay homage to its history by replacing damaged concrete on the perimeter of the house with 4-foot by 4-foot sandstone slabs. The grid of the sandstone slabs flows throughout the lower level of the house. Well, the original owner and architect took a risk by creating an innovative house of the international style of modern architecture. It was very unusual for its setting and location in a conservative, traditional small town in northeastern Ohio. It was unlike any other homes within the region. The risk for us may be more about economics. It's not easy, and it doesn't always pencil out to renovate such a property. It is a labor of love on our end. Carl Droppers did the heavy lifting, and we've taken the initiative to preserve his great work. We've received rave reviews from the neighbors regarding the restoration and improvements to the property. By writing the nomination for the National Register of Historic Places, it helps to prevent the demolition of this modern design and preserve a significant piece of historic fabric. The story of the 345 Glass House, which encompasses my career as an architect, continues to be a journey to share with friends, family, and colleagues. Being home again, enjoying it with my husband, and the overall quality of life once we arrive and get settled in makes it all worthwhile. Thank you to Cleveland Restoration Society and AIA Cleveland for the Award of Excellence for Stewardship and Preservation. It's great to be back where it all started.
The Distinguished Rehabilitation and Community Impact Award goes to Longfellow Senior Housing.
My name is Aaron Goldman. I'm the Director of Business Development and an architect with Marouse Brothers Construction. Now, on the Longfellow project, I was involved first through my board affiliation with Cleveland Restoration Society, and then as part of the successful design build team when Vesta was chosen to be the developer.
My name is Aaron Greenblatt. I'm Executive Vice President here at Vesta Corporation. I was part of the development team for Vesta. We responded to the initial RFQ. I was involved in the planning and submitting financing applications, as well as overseeing the development once financing was closed through construction completion.
The original Henry W. Longfellow School was the mainstay at East 140th Street in the Collinwood neighborhood. It first came into service in 1926 as a Cleveland Metropolitan School District elementary school. The Longfellow School was designed by Walter McCormick, who is credited with helping to create the Cleveland vernacular style of school architecture, which can be seen all over Greater Cleveland. The Longfellow School is also where Councilman Michael Polensek and former State Rep Jeff Johnson attended, along with many, many other notable people in Cleveland. The building last saw students in 2011. The project, as we know it, started in 2016, and we completed construction in 2023. From my perspective, this project started when, as a board member of Cleveland Restoration Society, I was asked to help join a task force whose mission was to stop CMSD from demolishing beautiful schools and to show them an alternative path to saving these schools. Ultimately, we created a collaboration between Cleveland Restoration Society and Cleveland Metropolitan School District after we went out on a limb and said that we know that we could, by searching nationally for the right developer, create a path to save the school and repurpose it to something very useful in the community. Schools, and particularly elementary schools, were the social or cultural hub of a neighborhood. And as these schools got decommissioned, starting in the 90s and 2000s, and it left a void in these neighborhoods, we didn't want that to happen to Longfellow School. And given that this building was vacant for 11 years with a 3x4 hole in the roof and took so much weather, we were hoping that when we started the project, there was no structural issues that may have been uncovered when we did some selective demolition. And we were blessed to find out that no, in fact, the building was pretty much what we thought. The school district was willing to do the asbestos remediation and remove the desks and the debris that were left when they decommissioned the school. We could take a look at what we really had to do in terms of plaster restoration, because this building's on the National Register, and we worked with SHPO to determine how we'd be able to do the masonry cleaning on the building, what tuck pointing techniques we'd use. There's tremendous overgrowth of vines on the building, and as you know, vines are very destructive. We had to use special techniques to remove carefully the vines so we didn't do further damage to the brick or to the mortar. We had to rebuild the chimney not once but twice due to lightning strikes, and which required very meticulous duplication of the type of corbelling and detailing. We also had to preserve the windows. Although we originally wanted to replace the windows, SHPO was adamant about keeping the historic window openings, and they're 9 or 10 feet tall and very wide and very expensive. And we took the windows out sash by sash, and we set up a workshop, and we had to remove the asbestos-laden putty and reglaze all the windows, restore the pulleys and weights and the sashes. And then we had to find a creative way to create storm windows on the inside of the building, because SHPO didn't want any kind of visual barrier deterrent on the outside of the building. With schools that get converted to housing, the hallways are typically 9 to 15 feet wide, as is the case at Longfellow. And while the units demised very well between classrooms, the problem is the overall efficiency of the floor plan is maybe 50–55%. From an economic standpoint, residential projects don't start working till they're 80+% efficient. Fortunately, on this site, we had the ability to do new construction and to increase the size of the project and do 50 new units of construction, right? So that we could blend between the historic renovation work and the new construction work, a cost per square foot that could still pencil out.
One of my favorite features is the old gymnasium at the school. From the start, we talked about how we would repurpose that, and it was pretty clear we needed to keep all the elements, or many of the elements, for the historic preservation, but we wanted to maintain that use, and we made it into the gymnasium is now an exercise room for the seniors.
The auditorium was in such terrible derelicted shape when we started, and we restored it pretty true to how it was used and envisioned originally.
The complexity of the financing that was necessary. There are a lot of stakeholders who came and contributed to getting this project done, and we really needed every dollar we could get.
This project was the first project, I believe, in the state of Ohio to use both 4% and 9% low-income housing tax credits on the same property, which is complex in and of itself. This project used state and federal historic tax credits. It was one of the last projects that was grandfathered in, since there's new legislation that now prohibits the twining of state historic tax credit and low-income housing tax credits on projects in Ohio.
This is the most complex financing structure that Vesta has ever had on any deal that we've done. It really is impressive how it came together to get to the end result. It's one of the most difficult projects we've ever done, but the end result speaks for itself, and just working from start to finish with our partners, with the community, that's one of my favorite aspects of it. We got calls and emails from people who are no longer children, but who had attended school there, who were excited to hear that it was going to be repurposed. So just the pride of the community in keeping it together was really important.
I just read an article about you restoring Henry Wadsworth Longfellow Elementary School on East 140th Street in Cleveland. And I just want to say I'm really happy because I went there from 1952 to 57 or 58, from 1st to 6th grade, and lived right down the street. And we would play in the front yard, and we'd play in the playground in the back, all my friends that I grew up with in there. And I'm glad it's not being torn down. A lot of good memories. So thank you.
Longfellow is a shining, stunning, remarkable example of what can be done by combining historic renovation and new construction to meet the needs of a community. CMSD and the city of Cleveland issued an RFP process for 12 soon-to-be otherwise demolished schools. Our mission was always to create a duplicatable blueprint that CMSD and other communities could follow to save and repurpose schools, and mission accomplished. I think Longfellow was a success in and of itself, and I think Longfellow was an even bigger success in terms of what it means to this community and to others as well. I was really happy for Michael Polensek and Jeff Johnson and a lot of the stakeholders, and happy for the city of Cleveland.
Some of our projects are fairly simple new construction. This was not. This is a project that has a long history. It has meaning to the community, and to get recognized for something like this is really special. I just want to say thank you to the Cleveland Restoration Society and AIA Cleveland for the Distinguished Rehabilitation and Community Impact Award. It means a lot. It's a really special award to have, so thank you very much.
The Distinguished Restoration of a Cultural Landmark Award and the AIA Craftsmanship Award go to the West Side Market Clock Tower.
Matt Sibla with Coon Restoration, estimator project manager for the project. I got involved as soon as I seen it was out for bid.
I'm Blake Ruffing. I was the site superintendent / foreman on the project. I got involved when Matt Sibla said we got the project and started moving forward.
I'm Mark Dulick. I'm the manager of architecture and site development for the Mayor's Office of Capital Projects at the City of Cleveland.
David Chain. I was project coordinator on this job from its inception on the whole of the West Side Market, and have been involved in this thing now for, I think, 5 years on the project.
I'm Brett Lorries, principal at Wisjani Elsner. I got involved in the project to help with the exterior terracotta restoration.
Cornerstone for this building was laid in 1912. The architects were Hubble and Bennis. This was part of a progressive era movement where the idea of protecting the public health, safety, and welfare was actually manifested in magnificent pieces of architecture, like the West Side Market. You could rely on those city inspectors there making sure that that meat was fresh, was properly prepared, properly cut, and that what you were sold you could have confidence in, because the city stood behind it. And we built an edifice that expressed that confidence, that vision, and that sense of progressive advancement. The last time that the West Side Market had seen substantial renovations was around a series of projects known collectively as the Millennium Project. By the time this rolled around, those renovations had kind of run their course. And when we decided to make a new capital plan, we started with an overall assessment of the whole building, with the idea that we would, over time, upgrade the envelope, upgrade the systems, upgrade everything about the market. So we came up with an overall budget and then a phasing plan. And then within the phasing plan, we identified areas not only of the most critical need, but critical desire. This tower is part of what we can arguably say is known as a Cleveland icon around the world. It's this sense of presence and the sense of guardianship, I guess, of the city and of health.
What we found as a result of initially a drone survey was that the deterioration on the tower was more excessive than what could be seen from ground level. Our difficult access team was employed. They rope rappelled down the entire structure, detailed all the various problems associated to it, and then gave a detailed report back to the city stating what the situation was.
The entire clock tower brick was repointed. The granite was repointed 100%. The terracotta was repointed 100%. The glass on the clock faces was all replaced. The clock mechanism was repaired. We installed uplighting at the clock tower. And then we also did Dutchman repair on the granite for areas that were cracked.
So to begin with, the terracotta at the very top, the water table was not square. It was oblong. It was shaped like a diamond. So we had to create a square that we had nothing to measure off of to set all these terracottas to make everything square back again. So we wanted to make this right the way it was supposed to be the day it was built. When it came down to the grinding out of the mortar, we did our due diligence, not cutting through the brick. We went each mortar joint, top and bottom, cut the joints out. And I know Mark was adamant that we showed all the aggregate in the mortar, and we sponged every square inch of that building to expose the aggregate. We knew that this was a Cleveland icon. It would represent Kuhn and the whole team to do our best possible job that we could on that project.
The amount of hidden problems are pretty enormous because you can't see everything, right? We had lots of problems with the building being out of square. That's how Brett Lowry's was called in, because he's an expert in the field of terracotta and how to balance this all out and make the thing look like it should look.
My favorite aspect of it has to be the terracotta. That decision and the support we got from the administration to do that cornice terracotta, or to do terracotta versus using GFRC, is the commitment to a level of authenticity where investing in real terracotta, matching the original to the market, matching the color as best we could, matching the joint pattern, matching the size of the units, everything about it, to be up there and the mast climber with Dave and with Blake while they solve problems and seeing the kind of energy between their two minds, figuring out how were we going to support these massive multi-100-pound pieces of terracotta, because we knew the old ones were up there, but we didn't know what was behind there until we took it all apart. So not only the time spent, but I think the deep technical expertise of these guys. The glass was discolored, there were pieces that were broken, some of them had been replaced with different things over the years. But Whitney came in and measured and took down the existing glass pieces and basically created all four faces, everything from the hands to the mechanism. There was actually one of the hands that was made of wood. Kuhn replaced that and milled a brand new one out of metal, just like the old ones, and hollowed it out in the back so that even the counterweights that are on the back side of these hands was in the same place and the same size as all of the other hands. It was really that kind of attention to detail.
For I don't know how long, nearly 18 months, walked up and down that staircase every week. I mean, Blake had a metal workshop up there on the top of the tower. I mean, it was the drill press and there was a welding machine and there was cutting capacities and bending capacities. It was interesting.
My favorite part of the whole project was definitely the lighting. We set these lights up and turned them on and watching everybody's face. I mean, just even myself, it was unbelievable. It just lit that tower up. The shadows, the new terracotta was just absolutely spectacular. It was the best moment of the whole project.
Everybody loves the market. I mean, if there's one institution we have in this city that is beloved to a degree that's almost spiritual, it's the market. But I think the thing that people haven't loved about the market is sometimes the way the city has taken care of it, and I'm being very honest on behalf of the city of Cleveland here. It's a very high maintenance facility. Through the years of recessions and tight budgets and limited bonding capacity and all those things, there was not always the ability or the capacity to really give it what the market deserves because of that iconic status, because it is so well loved and because it is so important. I mean, it's this tower and the clock and seeing that glow on a winter's night. I think it's seared in the memory of every Clevelander for generations. And there's not many things you can say that about. The market means a lot. And what's really great is we did this in time for this, as you're all aware, the transition from city management of the operations and ultimately of the physical improvements to the market to now the Cleveland Public Market Corporation. The fact that we were able to finish, I think, this highly important and symbolic component of the market in time for that transition to fully occur. I think that's a really important piece of this story. This tower is a symbol of progress. Being able to restore it and bring it back as still a symbol of progress. Just the kind of positive, progressive spirit that is kind of baked in Cleveland's DNA. You know, sometimes everything really comes together. Like once in a while, you get a project where it's the right time, it's the right amount of money, and it's the right team. The pleasure of being there in real time with people that are really at the top of their game, at the top of that tower, was something I'll never forget. The great thing about this project was going there every week or a couple times a week and going up on the tower. The best thing was the doing of the work. Receiving this award was like the next best thing. I think the great thing about public service is service, and everybody on this team did that. On behalf of this team, just a huge thank you to the Cleveland Restoration Society and the AIA Cleveland for the Distinguished Restoration of a Cultural Landmark Award and the AIA Cleveland Craftsmanship Award. It's a great honor.
Congratulations once again to all our winners. If you enjoyed tonight's program, please consider becoming a member. Learn more about the benefits, including our free behind-the-scenes Snoop tours, online at clevelandrestoration.org. If you would like to play a larger role in preserving, protecting, and celebrating Cleveland's historic buildings and places, please consider donating to the Cleveland Restoration Society's annual fund. Your gift makes our programs and events possible. Thank you again for joining us at the 2024 Celebration of Preservation Awards. It was wonderful to celebrate with all of you.